Well, Coach Joe Gibbs, welcome to the program. It's an honor to have you on Cars and Culture.
Jason, thank you. I appreciate being on.
It's amazing to think that this year will be 30 years, since you founded Joe Gibbs Racing. And it's actually hard to believe you've almost been in racing longer than you were in football, if you start back to your college days, certainly more than you were in pro football. I got to believe that's something you would have never guessed.
Well, I think I know that I am blessed. Most people never get to experience, in their occupational world, two dreams, and I had two dreams.
Yeah.
and I've been able to live both of them. Football, I grew up loving it, playing it, and wanted to be a part of it. And I was so fortunate to get a chance to. And when I got a chance to coach, it was at the perfect place and the perfect time with right management and owner and players. And then I moved to racing, which in growing up in my background in Southern California, I was drag racing and a bunch of stuff, loved cars, had hot rods and everything. So that was the two things that I was kind of occupationally fixed on. And who would believe that you get to live out two dreams? So I know how fortunate I am.
Well, and I want to get to football in a bit, and I want to, of course, get to your racing background, but we should not overlook another milestone and another dream that occurred earlier this year when you were able to record your first win as a grandfather when 18-year-old Ty won his Xfinity Series debut. And you said that day when you called home to talk to your wife, Pat, you said she was crying too hard to even talk. I've got to imagine for you, at this 30-year journey in racing and the other journey with football, that had to be a really special moment, Joe.
It really was. I think any parent or grandparent out there can tell you there's nothing that tugs at your heart like your kids and grandkids having success in something. And of course, we've been in racing so long and had 8 grandkids. And most of them, I got one girl and she's into horses, and the rest of them are in football, basketball, baseball. This little guy, from the time he was 2 years old, wanted to race something. And to have Ty have success is just a thrill for our whole family.
And you've had so many thrills in your racing career. I want to get to where that racing bug came from. You mentioned being interested in drag racing and other forms of racing growing up. But when did the racing bug really hit you?
I grew up, born here in North Carolina, and spent my first 15 years here. I had nothing to do with cars. It was all football, basketball, and baseball. Loved it. I went from one to the other playing them. But I moved to California when I was 16, and everybody in Southern California in the late 50s and early 60s, it was hot rods and drag racing. And man, I had every kind of hot rods you can think of. None of them expensive, obviously, but I think the most I ever paid for one was $800 or something. But I was into hot rods, and that was the culture. And then I got off into drag racing, spent quite a bit of time in that also. So that's where I fell into the fact that I love cars. I loved working on them. When I got through working on them, none of them would run. But so I'm not a lousy mechanic. But Pat and I, my wife, we got towed out of every drive-in in Southern California, I think, because I got through working on cars. But then when my kids came along, JD and Coy, we would always go back to races. And honestly, for their life, both of them, it was everything with the motor on it. It was go-karts, it was jet skis, it was motorbikes. And so our whole family loved racing. We loved going back to racing. And when JD graduated from college, he prompted us about maybe, hey, Dad, is there something we could do in racing? And so he and Coy were all in, put a dream on a sheet of paper. We had nothing. We had no cars, no drivers, nothing. Wound up on Norm Miller's doorstep at Interstate Batteries, and he said, let's do this. and it's 30 years later.
Amazing. A dream on a piece of paper. I mean, it's one thing to be a Super Bowl winning coach and to want to plot out maybe your next chapter. Maybe to some extent, though, it involves a little more recreational time, maybe a little more downtime. And at that moment, you decide that you're gonna plot out a future as a race car owner. I mean, you had to have people who looked at you and said, "Are you nuts?"
Honestly, there were people that said, "Are you nuts?" And when I showed up on Norm's doorstep with him and Tommy and their whole team down there at Interstate, I just made a cold call to him, and we spent 45 minutes on the phone, kind of hit it off. I went to visit him, and when I walked into those guys, they said, "Now, who's your driver?" And I said, "We don't have one." He said, "Well, where's your race shop?" And I said, "We don't have one." And he goes, I said, "Norm, this is a dream on a piece of paper." And honestly, that's how we started our race team. Our first year was leased a small complex, a small building. We had 17 people, and we kicked off our race team. And I was going to continue to coach. JD had graduated, so he was going to kind of start with a good friend of mine, Don Meredith, not the football Don Meredith, but a good friend, business friend of mine. They started the race team. I was going to coach. I lasted a year, and then Coy, my son, was playing football at Stanford. I'd missed most of JD's college career with the coaching, and so I wanted to get out of football. See Coy playing football at Stanford, and when that happened, we'd started the race team a year before. I immediately took off and went to Charlotte, and that's where we've been ever since.
Why did you call Norm Miller?
I had heard about Norm. I obviously, in my ministry and everything, I give my testimony and stuff at different places. I'd heard about Norm because Norm was also had several different ministries, I Am Second and things like that he started. And so I kind of knew about him from our backgrounds in ministry, but also it was, they were a battery company, and it was a natural for me. I actually showed up at the racetrack. I was looking around, and I actually saw Interstate Batteries on a race car, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm too late." But when I eventually got with Norm, they said, "No, we want to do this." And can you believe that last week, it's interesting that we're talking because last Thursday, I flew out to Denver. They were having their convention there, and we signed our contract that's going to take us through 31 years with Norm.
Wow.
So it's been a relationship and their company has just taken off and done extremely well. And of course, when we started, like I said, that first year we had 17 people. I figured it's one car. It was going to be, that's the way it would be forever. And today we're actually racing 10 cars in 3 different divisions. And we have 500 people working on race cars. And it's just a dream. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Interstate. So it's a great story. And it's interesting. We're talking 1 week after we signed that contract on our extension.
Yeah, congratulations. The piece of paper, the piece of paper where you wanted to put the dream down with JD and Coy. What was on that piece of paper?
It was really everything in those days, and it was so much simpler then. When we started racing, like I said, we started with 17 people. I mean, you just couldn't do that today. We probably have 100 people for each one of our cup cars. And so, but it was much simpler, but basically it's always the discussion of money. And I kind of calculated, what I thought it would take for us to start our race team financially. And that was our biggest part of the discussion. But the other side of that was Norm. And what Norm was saying to me and what Interstate wanted, if you went in and asked somebody that made batteries and sold batteries, they would be listed number 1. If you went to the average person on the street, they would be, and ask them if something happens to your battery, they would be listed third. And Norm said, I want to change that. I want the average guy on the street to say interstate. And after 3 years with our race team and the marketing that they did, today, from that point on, they've been number one in aftermarket battery sales. So it was both companies, our race team starting and Norm, I think have really grown together and benefited. And there's so much to our relationship and everything. You kind of go through those things and build those relationships, and it becomes a strong personal relationship with Norm. I vacation with Norm, Pat, and Norm and Ann. We go on vacations, and our two companies have we just naturally fit with each other.
You had to become an entrepreneur, right? I mean, you went from being an employee, albeit a very successful one with the Redskins, to being an entrepreneur. How difficult was that transition? And I'm guessing Norm probably helped you along the way, and as did Don Meredith.
Well, you're right in that my world that I grew up in was football. And so I was a technical guy in football. Help design the offense, call plays on the sideline. So I was a technical person there. When I moved over to racing, I didn't grow up in racing. I loved it and admired it and was a fan, but I didn't grow up in it. So immediately I said to myself, okay, I'm not a technical guy. What can I do to help the race team the most? And that is work with the people. It's picking the people, which is the most important thing that you're involved in when it's any kind of team sport. It was the people in football. It's the people over here. So my role was to help to pick the people, motivate the people, and then work with the sponsors and try and make sure that we have the money to race on. And I tell everybody, my thrill in football was every Sunday being on the sideline and calling plays. My thrill over here is the first of every month trying to pay the bills. So it's exciting in both places.
Well, let's talk about paying the bills, because you had a pretty important lunch with Don Meredith. I think it was over Swordfish, perhaps, at the Palm Restaurant. I don't know the location, but I'm sure you do, where you talked about the number one principle in those first couple of years, which was budget. And things didn't really get off to such a good start on the budget side. And 6 months in or so, Don asked to meet you for lunch, and you're a little panicked at what he tells you. What does he tell you?
Well, it was dinner, and Don was kind of overseeing the race team and getting everything started, and JD was working with him, and Don's son, Todd, and Dave Alpern, who, by the way, is our president today, has been with us the whole entire time. They were getting the race team underway. And so the only night that I could get off and have fun, I would have a late dinner after my TV show at the Palm. And so Don said, I need to come up and meet with you. So I'm about halfway through my Swordfish, which is my favorite meal. And he goes, right now we're $250,000 in the hole. We'd only been operating 6 months. I choked on my Swordfish, and I kind of went back, and what we did really, we simplified things. And Jimmy Makar was our first crew chief. We kind of put all operations underneath Jimmy, and Don went to work, and somehow we survived that first year. But it's interesting you bring that up, because that was a panic time for me, for sure.
Well, you're wondering, I'm guessing at the time, going, what have I just got myself into here, right? And a lot of people talk about racing in various series as being a bit of a black hole on the money side. But you got it turned around, and you got it turned around in a hurry, because that second year, you did something really special in the first race of the season. The Super Bowl coach went and won the Super Bowl of racing. How important was that Dale Jarrett win back in '93?
That was huge for us. that first year when we went through the first year, Jason, many times I was kind of saying, man, this is probably too big for us. We didn't win a race. We kind of struggled through that entire year. And so when you start the second year, and our Super Bowl, we start with it. It's the Daytona 500. And everything that took place in that victory was it was like a fairy tale in a lot of ways. And I think it verified to me and Norm, to all of us, that maybe this is a place that we belong, racing. And to have that victory and everything that kind of went along with it, there's a lot of stories about that victory. And my son, JD, it was his second year there, working there. He's a good athlete. We had him changing tires. And there was a wild episode there. I'll just share it with you real quick. In those days, when you changed tires, it was left side and right side. And so JD's a good athlete. We said, okay, start our second year. Let's put him on the pit crew. And so as that race started, all of a sudden I kind of see our car up front and everything. And I go, oh my gosh. I said, this is going to be, it looks like we have a chance here. And when it came down towards the end, I said, oh my gosh, it's going to come down to the last pit stop. My son JD's
he's changing tires.
Race, changing tires. I'm ready to throw up, And so they come in for the pit stop, and the story goes like this: he had Don's son Todd Meredith was carrying tires on that side, so JD changes the front tire on that pit stop. He goes to the back tire, and he hit about 3 lug nuts, and they dropped the jack, and the car was gone. He stood up, and Todd said to him, "Did you get those all tight?" And JD said, I got 3 of them tight. and Todd goes, can we make it on that? Can we make it on that? He looked up at our crew chief, Jimmy Makar. His nickname is Mad Dog. He wasn't going to tell Mad Dog that he only got 3 tight. He goes, we're getting ready to find out. So we won that race.
Yeah, the rest was history.
And actually, it did kind of catapult us to being in racing, loving racing. And today, this is all we do, our family. We come to work every day. This has to go for us. And this is where we put all of our time and all of our efforts occupationally. And we love it. And we're excited about each and every year and each and every race when we go to the racetrack. We got partners now like Toyota, who mean so much to us. The partnerships here are really what's great. And the relationships are what's great. I mean, everybody inside of Toyota, Bob Carter, Jack Hollis, Dave Wilson, those guys I all know personally. We've gone through the good times, the bad times. And, it's exciting for me. And the different relationships you get with the sponsors, it's fun. And the thing about racing, because it's so much in the open and public, you deal with the top people in the companies. And when they invest to go racing with you, there's a huge obligation there that I feel we need to be successful for them. And we're in a competitive business. We need to win, and we need to be up front in these companies. And so you got to earn your way with them. And I love that part of it too, the challenge.
I don't want to lose the significance of that 93 race for our audience. The first year that you were racing, Dale Jarrett had 8 top 10s and 2 top 5s, but didn't win. And then we get into that 93 race, the Daytona 500, which some will know was called the Dale and Dale Show because Dale Earnhardt was going for his 15th attempt at trying to win the Daytona 500 and really was one of the most exciting races in history. And Coach Gibbs, I was watching a replay of that ending before this show taping here. I was nervous watching it again, and it's 30 years ago.
It had all the drama.
It did.
That you could have in sports. It really did for us.
And they doused you with Gatorade at the end.
Yeah, we didn't even know where Winter Circle was. And so Norm and myself and all of us, when we finally find Winter Circle, we got in there. I knew nothing about when you win a race, what you're supposed to do. We were supposed to go to the media center afterwards. I didn't know that. And so we're wandering around in there. We're throwing Gatorade and everything. When we got through with that, I see the trophy there. I grabbed the trophy and I told the boys, let's go. And so we took off. We didn't go to the media center or anything. We get in the car and we go out on the road there in Daytona and we turned north. And if you go down through there, there's on the side of the road there's a hamburger stop. And what am I thinking of, Chris? What's the hamburger joint there? Anyway, my boys see it, Steak and Shake. And they said, Dad, we're hungry. We hit Steak and Shake. We pull in there. We got the trophy. There's about 50 fans. They recognize us. We spent about 30 minutes taking pictures in the parking lot of Steak and Shake. And each time that we've won the Daytona 500 since then, we always celebrate at Steak and Shake. So anyway, there's a lot of stories to it, but it was a phenomenal experience for us.
Did you go to the Steak and Shake after the 2019 win?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We've been there every time we've won the Daytona 500, the last three that we won with Denny. We've been there each time.
19 was special for you. You called it one of the most important victories out of all the things you've done, and for good reason. It was obviously just after the passing of your son. I've got to imagine that the significance of that still resonates with you today.
That was the greatest and most emotional sporting event of my life. And the story there, of course, JD built the race team.
Mm-hmm.
It was here and was an instrumental part of that. He was the president. JD, in so many ways, honestly tried to live a godly life. Well, we started noticing about 8 years ago some changes in JD. He just got quieter. And when we eventually got to the doctors, it wound up being a situation where he had a degenerative brain disease. And it was a 5-year struggle. And 3 years ago, JD went to be with the Lord. And no greater heartbreak could ever happen to anyone. And that race, what took place in that 500 in 19, JD had found Denny racing late models. And so Denny really came to racing, a lot of it because of JD. So JD's number in high school and everything was 11, and Denny's was 11. So they both experienced the number 11. NASCAR said to us, we want to celebrate JD's life. What lap do you want to do that on? And we said 11. And so it was the 11th lap in the race. We all stood up on the wall and celebrated JD's, going to be with the Lord. So it comes down to the end of that race, and you know how hard it is to win a Daytona 500. It's just unreal.
Yeah.
And somehow Denny wound up winning the race. We finished first, second, and third. And JD's name is over the door of the car. Denny wanted his name over the door. And I think everybody that kind of saw that race felt like God's hand had to be on that. It's a very emotional time for us. And like I said, it was the greatest sports victory or experience I've had because of the way it honored JD's life. And people today can go to JD Gibbs legacy.com. We've had over 9 million people go to that website, and it's celebrating the celebration we had for his life. And a lot of people said that website has been life-changing for them. So it was a total emotional time, and I kind of felt like it was God's hand on that race and kind of honoring everything that JD had done about his life. He's got 4 boys, and everything that he did on affecting other people's lives. JD was so good at individually touching people. I kind of have a tendency of doing big things, speaking at stuff and all kinds of things, but he was really the spiritual leader of our family, I think, in so many ways.
Yeah, Tony Stewart said that he was influential in ways that most people could never have known because he did it in a very quiet way.
Yes, he did. He did. And it was mostly the stories that came back to us after JD went to be with the Lord. Most of the stories came back were individual stories where he just saw somebody, reacted to him. Somebody would come into the race shop with somebody that was struggling with a disease or something. He would take them on tours. It was just those stories are played out, and we got stacks of witnesses from different people where JD had an impact on them.
It's amazing. Beautiful story. How much has your life changed in the last couple of years as you've reflected on his passing? And maybe what I want to ask is, I know that you've done a lot of personal reflection. You've spent a lot of time thinking about the time that you spent away as a coach. And you talk a little bit about how much you were consumed by your experience in the NFL. I'm guessing you wouldn't change anything, but you certainly have thought a lot about it, right?
Yes, I have. And you mentioned how's JD, his time with us, how's that affected us? And it's affected our entire family. Coy, my other son, I had 2 great sons. Coy was playing football at Stanford, came out and was always wanting to chart his own way in life. He didn't want to come in and be on top of JD and us here at the race team. So he started his own motocross team. And he was, that was something he felt really strongly about. And Coy's very independent, wants to do his own thing. Well, when JD went to be with the Lord, Coy came over here and started working with us here, and is the person that someday will take over the race team here. So it changed Coy's life. Mm-hmm. It obviously changed Melissa and the boys, JD's boys. And so it changed my life. And so we've all had to adjust to that. And, it's been hard. Dave Alpern, who was with us 31 years ago and started working with JD, and when JD got sick, he took over as president in JD's place. It's changed his life. And it's changed the whole structure of everything here. And so we've all, as a family, kind of fought through it. And really what's exciting right now, out of those 500 people that work here, we have many of those people that have been with us 20, 25 years. We give out awards here. So it's like a big family here. And so that's been instrumental. But all of that for the last 3 years, we didn't anticipate any of that. And we've had to, through all the heartbreak, work through it, but it's changed everybody's life, and certainly the lives of everybody in our family.
I've talked to Rick Hendrick on the show, who said that it is a very lonely club to be in the club of a father who's lost a son. I know you've probably talked to Rick about that as well.
We have. We visited about that, and Rick and I, share that heartbreak, and you can't really put it in words. It's just something that, you never anticipate. And I would hope that no parent would ever have to go through that. But when Rick and I sit and talk, obviously both love racing. Rick helped me when we got started in racing here. He did an alliance with us to help us get started. But when we talk, many times we talk about his son Ricky and JD and the experience that of going through all that with our families. So we share that. We share that heartbreak.
Let me ask you a few football questions. When you think back on Coach Joe Gibbs, the Redskins leader, what sticks out in your mind of that time in your life?
I think it's the people. For me, I grew up in, like I said, in football. And so my dream became, after a while, was to be a head coach, not knowing I would get a chance to do that. And when Mr. Cook and Bobby Beathard, recommended me to take that job, and I got the job at the Redskins, I really thought the dynamic there was, well, I get a chance to be a head coach. If I make it, great. If I don't, at least I've had the chance. And I was kind of focused on myself and our family. And when I got there, the reality for me was something totally different, because now not only did Mr. Cook and Bobby recommend me for the job, so their reputations were on the line, but I went out and recruited those 12 coaches, the assistant coaches, and so now they come there, move their families there. And then I think the Redskins, as we call today the Washington football team, I think it's the greatest sports franchise in the world. And all those fans are now depending on you, on me. So what happened to me, it was totally different. I now got the coaches, I got the front office, I got the fans, besides your family. And I said, oh my gosh,
wow,
we better win. And so that's what drives you. And I think for me, the only way that I felt like I could be successful at it, I know some other coaches do it a different way, but for me, it was really paying a price and staying there and working late. And I took both my boys, Coy and JD, after I got through coaching, and I took them to lunch, and I said, hey, they both have 4 kids apiece. I said, don't do what I did. I said, you got great families. I could have organized that a different way. I could have spent more time with my boys, and I missed that. And that's one of the things I second guess in life. But I shared with them, and I said, don't do what I did. Organize your life in a different way, your professional life. And the great thing that God has blessed me with, racing, I then and now get to experience time with my family and with my kids. And so I got to work with JD and building the race team. Now I work with Coy and building the race team. I got my grandkids. And so, I've been blessed that I got to make up for some of that time that I missed. But that is something I'll always second guess in my life, is all that time that I missed with my boys.
Your favorite football memories? And Pat, sure. Yeah, favorite football memories. What one or two moments stick out?
I think it. I think it always, kind of evolves around those years where sometimes you kind of capture it. A team does, and it's got a great chemistry. And we wound up in Super Bowls, and so I think it's those experiences that when you try and pick one game, that's extremely hard to do. The second year that I coached, we had not beat Dallas, and we beat them at RFK to go to the Super Bowl in a strike-shortened year. And I remember the stands. I mean, literally,
they were rocking,
going up and down,
yep.
And our fans are yelling, "We want Dallas! We want Dallas!" You know what I mean? And it's one of the few times I was ever picked up on people's shoulders after the game when we won, and they had given out banners on sticks to everybody that came in for that game. And they had me up on his shoulders. I'm getting stuck with those banners and stuff. I said to myself, I need to get down and get in the locker room. I'm gonna get killed out here on the field. But it was one of the great experiences. But anyway, when people ask me about, I can't pick one game, but those years that you kind of grab it and you get the chemistry and you get the great feeling, and you wind up in a Super Bowl. Those are huge. Just like over here in racing, getting to win a championship
Well, and both.
here in racing is so hard, so hard. We were fortunate enough to go to a Super Bowl the second year that I coached. Over here, it took 9 years for us to win a championship in racing. So they're great experiences, and I've been blessed, and I know how blessed I am. God's blessed me, and I really know that, because most people, like I said, never get to experience one dream in their lifetime occupationally, and I've had two.
Well, and you also knew how to pick the right team members. Let's talk about those Super Bowl teams. What most people don't know is half of those teams were free agents. They were players that had been cut or nobody wanted to, pick them up, and you integrated them into a team, which I know you've done the same thing with your racing teams, and you're always looking for the right people around you. In fact, one of your famous quotes from winning the 500 was, my job is to pray and stay out of the way, because you had people you had people around you.
Yeah.
You wanted to surround yourself with who were exceptional. How do you get the most out of the people around you?
I think that deal, I would say that's the thrill. I love that aspect of it, team sports. I was not a good athlete myself. I said I've always been a part of team sports. I said the only award I ever got in sports was most improved. So I'm not a great athlete, but I love team sports, and it is picking the right people. And if for instance, when I coach the Redskins, if I pick the right 45 guys, they're going to make me look good. And so it is people, but people, we all know it's a real challenge with people. Most of us come into the world, we're focused on ourselves, and what you're asking people to do when you recruit them and put them on your team, you're asking them to sacrifice their individual goals for the goals of the team, and that's hard. And some people can't do that, but it is working with the people and winding up getting the people in the right positions, and then if you selected the right guys, I think people are not focused. The great players, the great employees are not focused on money and stuff. They're focused on how's the team going to win, and so that's the challenge.
You had to build a culture with the Redskins as well as with Joe Gibbs Racing. And part of that culture is that folks have said about you and your leadership style that they just don't want to let you down. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but I think every person is different, so you can't treat everybody the same. So it's individually being able to work with people, and I think is really important. But I think the goals of the team, everybody gets fixed on that, and the great players, like I said, there is a financial side of the NFL. But I always told the players, look, that's very important to you. Get your agent, get your family, and your mate, and make the best financial deal you can make. But at that point, when you've made it and you've committed to the Redskins and you step over that line, from that point on, it's all about us becoming a great team and winning. And of course, that's all of that. It's building teams. I think the reason why we love, as fans, to watch a team and a great team perform, because we do know how hard it is. It's the best people in the world trying to do something. It's the greatest reality show in the world.
Yeah.
It's the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And we love to kind of see that played out in front of us. So I've been fortunate to live a life where, It's fun every weekend going to the racetrack and seeing if we can beat the best people in the world. And it was the same thing in the NFL for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the pressure of competition in racing versus the pressure of winning in the NFL, but I think you just answered that. They're very similar, aren't they, Joe?
Yeah, very similar. Everything about racing is very similar to football. The only difference over here, we got a car. But really, the rest of it, and football, you got to have a great quarterback to go anywhere. Over here, you got to have a great driver. And coaching, you'd like to have a coach that's a smart guy and a good coach. Over here, it's crew chiefs, same role, same everything. And then you got all the different personnel and people and football, the linemen, everybody counting on each other. It's a team sport, and it's the same thing over here in racing. So the two sports, anybody that's good in football would be good in racing, and people are good in racing would be good in football. The only difference is in football, it would help if you're 6'4" and 310 pounds and can run 4.7.
Well, and I would argue you did something that other legendary coaches didn't. Vince Lombardi had Bart Starr, Chuck Noll had Terry Bradshaw, Don Shula had Greasy, Landry had Staubach, Walsh had Montana, and Belichick had a guy named Tom Brady. And you showed us that you can actually win without having a marquee quarterback. In fact, you won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. You kind of...
I kind of disagree. I disagree on that, though, with people when they tell me I had 3 great ones. If you think about Theismann, that guy, that was one of the most competitive people in the world. And people ask me, when they ask me something about Joe Theismann, I always reflect back to it wasn't going to Super Bowls. It was a Monday night game against the Giants.
Yeah.
It's kind of hail and sleeting. It is freezing. And in the first half, he threw 3 interceptions. He comes to the sideline with 2 minutes to go in the first half. I figure he's going to say, I think I'm going to sit the rest of this one out. I look at him. He's spitting blood. He's got his 2 front teeth knocked out. And I'm going, oh, my gosh. And so in the fourth quarter, he led us on a 65-yard drive. We kicked a field goal to win the game by 1 point, and Mark Mosley set the record for 32 straight field goals. That's what I remember about Theismann. You take Doug Williams, one of the great stories in sports, first black MVP of the Super Bowl. I had a long history with him because I went to look at him in college and spent 3 days with him, and when we drafted him with Tampa. Just one of the great sports stories in America, I think, is Doug Williams. And then you go to Rippon. I mean, Mark Rippon was a brilliant football guy. Mark Rippon, I think, was either twice or 3 times least sacked quarterback in the league. And he was not a runner. He was stationary in the pocket. He was so bright, so sharp. We could do almost anything with him. He knew wherever check down was and never missed anything deep. So I had 3 guys that people kind of say, hey, you won Super Bowl, but I think there were 3 great quarterbacks, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
You mentioned partnerships earlier, just back to racing. You started with GM. GM really welcomed you when you got into the sport. As you said, you didn't have a driver, and it was an amazing accomplishment to do what you did with GM. And then all of a sudden you have a new partner who comes into the mix. And I want to talk about Toyota and their significance to the sport. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you kind of found the right combination with a team that is absolutely focused to win, like the Toyota team is, and your experience now. I know you've gone through your share of ups and downs, and any partnership, of course, goes through that. But just tell me the impact of Toyota in your racing life now.
Well, you're right, Jason, and the fact that when I wanted to get in racing, GM took a chance on me. I always appreciate that. And we mentioned Rick helping. So we spent that time with them, won championships there. But when Toyota came along and we had a chance to talk to them, if we stayed inside of GM, Rick Hendrick was always going to be in front of us, really, and Richard Childress, with 8 championships, was always going to kind of be in front of us. So we were kind of third, at least, if not lower, from some of the other teams there inside the gym. When we had a chance to go to Toyota, it was a chance to maybe distinguish ourselves and have a chance to be a key player for them. And so we made that step. And, when you get in partnerships, particularly in something like this, where it's racing is so hard, so many struggles, you're going to go through the ups and downs. I can say this, that's been a fantastic partnership. Every time we kind of were down in some way, it was always, hey, we're going to work and we're going to work together. And it was never pointing fingers, we're going to fix this together and working our way back out of it. And Toyota is a great partner. And everybody inside of Toyota, the great thing about Toyota is everybody from Akio on down, Mr. Akio on down inside of Toyota, they love racing. They're racers. And they're there with you. And so it's been a great partnership, and we have, been successful and won championships. It's a thrill, and it's, a thrill for me to be in partnership with them. And again, it's the relationships over there. It's Bob Carter, Jack Hollis, it's David Wilson, and all the guys over there that you kind of share the ups and downs with.
In fact, Bob Carter has shared with me that there's been no thrill bigger for him than to go to Akio's office and to present him with some of your winnings, your trophies, the fact that you've been so successful with them.
One of my favorite pictures here is Bob Carter and Akio, and Akio holding the championship ring.
Yeah.
And Bob said when he went over there, Akio, when he presented it to him, he took it through the entire office. To think about that, somebody that lives that kind of life, that's running one of the biggest and most powerful companies in the world, gets excited about it. It's fun for us. I'll put it that way.
Well, and he's a big race guy. I mean, he's taken the track more times and loves getting behind the wheel.
Yes. Yes, he is.
How about you? Tell me about, we talked a little bit at the beginning about your car collection when you were a hot rodder in California. What's your car collection today?
I got one. I got a hot rod. I got a 37 Ford. Pat and I had hot rods, like I said, when we were dating in California. And we got all the cars here, the race cars and everything. And so Pat and I were sitting at a stop sign. This is about 8 years ago. And a hot rod came by, and she goes, we ought to have one of those. And that's all it took for me. All it took for me, we got a 37 Ford, and I got more money in it. It's a typical hot rod deal. And so, but we got it all. I got Corvette running gear and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, we got one hot rod, and then we got all the cars here. So we got plenty of cars. I'll put it that way.
So Mr. Hendrick is not rubbed off on you, in that you're not looking to expand to 100 to 200 vehicles of your own anytime soon.
Let me say this: that guy's museum over there is unreal.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance to look at that,
he's invited me down.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not. Has he? Well, I haven't. I had a chance to go over and see it, and it's special. I'll tell you that. No, I don't have anything like that.
Finally, what's next for you, Joe Gibbs? What are you most excited about?
I think for me, it's family and the fact that the race team wanting to build it as strong as we can. And now I got my first grandson on JD's side. Jackson is just graduated from college. He's going to come to work here at the race team. I'm excited about that. I got all of our other grandkids and chasing them in life, and what are they going to want to do? And probably some of them are going to be a part of the race team. And so I think it's family, building the race team, and then ministry. I got my ministry is Game Plan for Life. We got a website here with a lot of material on it, and I do little 2-minute drills, and I give my testimony. And I never thought I'd write another book other than Game Plan for Life, but I am. After JD went to be with the Lord, I wasn't prepared for loss. I had a game plan for life, but I wasn't prepared for that. And so I just wrote a book with 5 main questions I had about losing somebody like that and having them, JD, going to be with the Lord. So I wrote that book. It's going to be Game Plan for Loss. I wasn't prepared for loss. So that'll be coming out in maybe like 6 months or so. So ministry and family, me and Pat kind of chasing the things that we got here in life. I love it. I get excited every day about getting up.
Thank you so much for joining me today. You're an inspiration. Congratulations on your 30th year in racing and an incredible chapter 2. I bet you there's a chapter 3 out there too.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. If you get a chance, go to that website, jdgibbslegacy.com. I think you would enjoy it.
Great. Thank you.
The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on Sirius XM Business Radio.